Strange hill to die on, saying I stand with Morneau, because Bill Morneau, for all sakes and purposes, is a pathetic, vacuous man.
Hello and welcome back.
Viewers! Welcome back to This Week in Canada. My name's Nico Johnson, I'm the political correspondent here at TPM, and this is...
My name is Roberto Wakerell Cruz from the Post Millennial. I'm the news editor at the Post Millennial. Thanks for coming back.
It's lovely to have you.
This is episode 8 of the podcast, This Week in Canada. This is, I think, our third iteration that is in person. It's nice to be here at the office rather than stuck at home in that nasty quarantine, that lockdown period. And it's a good thing we got back. We were back just in time because we're in the midst of another government scandal. And
Another one. May I just say, before we start, that Roberto tasked me of doing the intro for this week's podcast. So I started off. He immediately saw it was horrific and quickly commandeered it. So I'm feeling a bit disappointed about my ability to actually do podcasting. But, you know, that's fine.
The reason that we're so excited is because there's so much going on in Canada this week. Again.
Tons.
Now, if you watch this podcast, you know the last few weeks have been kind of heavily peppered in wee charity talk. But it just won't let up. It's just not going away, it seems like, because this week, Bill Morneau had to go talk to the finance committee, was it?
Yeah.
And he looked like a dumbass, we got to say.
It's interesting because usually with these scandals, the government press, communications team will try and throw all the most harmful stuff out at once. Because, imagine if all this We Charity stuff was combined into one day of news event. We'd lose all of it. We'd lose like 60% of it. And on top of that, we'd stop talking about it pretty soon. But because it's been slowly leaking out, it's just continued now for 3 weeks?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks at this point. And it's because it's so layered, like a fine 7-layer dip at a Taco Bell or something, right? It's like you thought it stopped at the cheese, but now we're at the beans and guacamole, and we still have 4 more layers to go.
Four more layers to go.
I feel like that was a good analogy. And now we're at the Bill Morneau, which is the beans of the dip. So Bill Morneau, as it turns out, Nico can better explain this, but he spoke to the finance committee, to a bunch of people, but namely Pierre Poilievre was there, who is the shadow finance minister and is a Chad, just an alpha, awesome guy.
Yeah.
Should be prime minister. We wish he was running. Wish him well. Not that he's going anywhere, but he totally just roasted Bill Morneau over a $41,000 adventure to Ecuador and China. Or no, not China, Ecuador and Kenya.
Morneau's very, very wealthy. He inherited essentially $1 billion. It's more money than I'll ever see in my life. So that's the first thing to recognize here. And you have to recognize Bill Morneau's other ethics scandal, where he forgot about a villa in France, as you do. I suppose with a man of that wealth, if I'm going to be really, really generous, you could forget about a $40,000 trip. But still, he didn't pay it back until yesterday, or not yesterday, but the day before the ethics committee on this, because you have to tell the truth by law in those committees, and it just looks so corrupt. I think this is quite pertinent for a lot of Canadians, because firstly, who has a $50,000 vacation? And the number, $40,000, is actually the standard middle-class annual salary in Canada. So the fact that this guy, who isn't very clever, we know he's not very clever, can spend $40,000, a normal person's 1 year's salary, on a vacation, a week-long vacation, and forget about it, is pretty astonishing, and I think reveals quite a lot about the government.
Yeah, it definitely did. I mean, I watched that whole thing go down, and it was kind of embarrassing. He looked like a fool, because, of course, his excuse was that he forgot. Yeah. And as Pierre Poilievre pointed out,
you forgot?
You forgot? you don't forget $41,000. And he, what Poilievre said is, like, where did you think the wine was coming from? Where did you think the night luxury hotel rooms that you were staying in? Where did it fall from the sky? Good point.
It's
it doesn't
interesting.
Just fall from the sky.
Under the Harper government, a woman went to a very expensive hotel in London. She was a cabinet minister, I should probably say. And she bought orange juice that cost $14. Now, I love orange juice with coffee. I think it's a wonderful combination. But $14 orange juice is clearly quite nice.
$16 orange juice.
My apologies. And she resigned over it. So why isn't Morneau resigning here? And that's the question we have to tackle. And it's because there is just complete apathy amongst every level of the Canadian establishment. And you sort of understand why. Well, the civil service just sort of... And this is the most important thing. They are all metropolitan. They are all progressive. And at the end of the day, they may vote NDP. Maybe they voted for Harper, once. But at the end of the day, they are all Liberals. And people like to say there's no class in Canada. But there very clearly is when you look at this establishment, which is just composed of progressive, university-educated, metropolitan Liberals. And this is why these guys don't have to resign. Because at the end of the day, if the media were to really attack the Trudeau government and the Morneau, ministerial position, as they had been doing a little bit, but if they really went sort of British-level tabloid attack on Morneau, well, that means they don't get their media bailout. And they also sort of sympathise with the Liberal parties because they're also a part of the establishment. If a civil service kicked up a tremendous fuss about the fact that they weren't awarded the contract or didn't do didn't facilitate the contract, which they should have, we already have a program like this. They'd just be expanding a civil service program. The reason why they didn't do that is because they all sympathise with the Liberal Party. They're all from the same cohort of Canadian society. And it's not a one-party state. Canada has fair and free elections. There's a judicial system which is totally free and independent. It's a democracy of all sakes and purposes, but it's a one ideology state, and it's never goes beyond that. And I don't want to reveal all my cards about the Conservative Party, but if Peter MacKay gets in, who is a similar sort of Bay Street progressive, who slightly more conservative than Bill Morneau, but not a great deal. They're pretty similar people. Yeah. And if you look at Justin Trudeau's life and compare it to Peter MacKay, it's very, very similar. Well, then you just have two varying degrees of Liberal. There's no opposition here. It's just an overriding Liberal ideology that has possessed Canada and which won't go anytime soon.
No, that's kind of the scary part. It's kind of like, where does it go from here? Yeah. We can hope there's some accountability. I mean, but what's going to happen? There's like the ethics commission, if they find him in violation, last time he gets fined some money and a slap on the wrist. I mean, he broke the ethics commissioner found him to be guilty of the SNC-Lavalin thing. Totally some foul play going on there, and it seemed like absolutely nothing happened. It seemed like there was the balance sheet was still at zero after that whole thing. It just seems like, is there anything that can happen that would lead to Justin Trudeau losing the next election?
Well, the thing is,
I don't really know.
Morneau's a very important cabinet minister. He's the finance minister, which already makes him important. But more so than that, he is actually instrumental in the Liberal government's policy. He's the second most important man, I would say, with Chrystia Freeland. They shape what the government looks like. And because of that, they don't want to get rid of Morneau. On top of that, if Morneau is held to account here, then but by nature of precedent, Trudeau will surely be held to account, which means that they're playing a dangerous game. And the way they're getting around this is blaming one of Justin Trudeau's junior ministers. He serves as a junior minister to Bill Morneau. Now,
Bardish Chagger, I think is her name.
And again, she is a minority woman, which I don't fucking care about, but like the Liberals do, or they say they do, and and yet again they are throwing a minority woman under the bus to preserve the jobs of two unbelievably rich white men. And it's just the hypocrisy. They have no principles.
One of the more surprising updates of this that I just thought about, we didn't write it on this nice little envelope here that I write our ideas on, but yesterday, it was Thursday that I saw on Twitter, something trending, I don't know if you saw, was a hashtag I stand with Bill Morneau. Now, this is a type of kind of delusion, a type of like, just you must be out of your mind to really be on the side of Bill Morneau here. And the people that sometimes what happens on Twitter is there's a hashtag, and then the hashtag gets flooded by people responding angrily to that hashtag. Like if it was something, I don't know, Justin Trudeau is a treasonous guy, whatever. And then you see all the people as a bunch of Liberals in the response, just like, I can't believe conservatives are saying Justin Trudeau is a treasonous whatever. This isn't really the case with this one. It was actually filled with sincere people sympathizing with Bill Morneau, saying that, oh, this is some sort of CPC conspiracy. And it's just like, are you just not listening? You're just choosing to not listen. And it's always some lady in her 50s that is just like, I don't know, lives in New Brunswick or whatever, and just doesn't actually pay attention to the news. It can be a man too, but in this case, the ones I saw were women. I love women. And it's just like, oh, you don't actually care. You're a Dallas Cowboys fan. You're a Rough Riders fan. You don't care. Like, it doesn't matter what the other teams are doing. You're a fan of your team, and you're gonna die with them because the Rough Riders are the best.
And it's a strange hill to die on, saying I stand with Morneau, because Bill Morneau, for all sakes and purposes, is a pathetic, vacuous man. He's so simple. He doesn't deserve to be where he is, and I'm sure there's people in the Liberal government who could do a much better job than Morneau's doing, but they just side with him again for no particular reason.
Pretty sad. So with that story, Justin Trudeau is set to speak to the Finance Committee at a yet-to-be-announced date and time.
Which is going to be a hell of a day for us.
It's going to be a good day. I mean, it was fun enough watching Bill Morneau squirm in his chair like a sweaty crab apple. And so now we get to watch Justin Trudeau just really nervously. Yeah, so we'll see how this whole thing plays out. It's getting a little exhausting, I gotta say. I'm a little...
It won't end.
It won't end, but it's not so much the scandal. I love scandals, especially when it's a government against a government I don't love, right?
Yeah.
But this one just doesn't seem like it's going to really result in much, which is why it's more depressing.
Well, you know what's really, really depressing? And again, I sort of touched on this earlier, is that if the Trudeau government is to fall here, it won't be as a result of particularly bombastic media. It won't be as a result of an opposition which is fairly impotent. It won't be as a result of the public, who in Canada I think are fairly apathetic about politics, versus other Western liberal democracies. It will be because other liberal ministers will have had enough, and will see it as an opportunity to replace Trudeau. And this is why they're the governing party of Canada. They have so much power, and they're so good at it. And they always get away with it. And we're going to see Chrystia Freeland step in. I mean, forgive me if this is a bit gloomy, but I imagine Freeland's going to step in eventually. And it's going to be considered a whole new government. And then we're going to go through the whole, the same rodeo. And eventually she will get involved in scandals. And then, someone else will go in and replace her. It's so depressing.
Yeah, and we're going to have to listen to her voice the whole time, which is nice. Grating. But if you want to keep up with that, follow us. We are in and out on this scandal, but also a great guy to follow on Twitter is Pierre Poilievre, who consistently roasts the Liberals over and over, makes sure everyone is up to date on why things are going the way they are. Great follow. Pierre, you're the best.
And don't forget to subscribe.
And subscribe to us, Pierre. So moving on to lighter topics, the podcast was intended to be a little more lighthearted, but we're so doom and gloom here in Canada. It's just getting a little depressing. So we're going to talk about something more culturally fun, more fun culturally, and that's the Edmonton football team.
The
EE football team. So for those if you're part of the majority of Canadians that don't really watch the CFL, there's a team in Edmonton that plays football. Now, for generations, they were referred to as the Edmonton Eskimos. Now, Eskimos is a term that apparently is offensive
towards the Inuit.
Towards the Inuit.
Yeah. But what's strange about this one is that the Inuit have come out. I believe, again, I'm not really following this story, but I think I saw the Inuit come out and say, yeah, we don't actually care that much.
Yes, correct.
So it's white. Again, it's my sister and her friends getting annoyed, white people getting annoyed on behalf of other people who aren't offended.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. So there was actually a really good, and this isn't exactly journalism, but it's more of like a funny video with Australian comedian Jim Jeffries. I don't know if you know who he is.
I know Jim Jeffries.
Yeah, a fairly left-wing guy. He was a comedian, did very raunchy jokes. He's going to get canceled next, I'm telling you, because his jokes were all about like having sex with women that were too drunk, doing cocaine, and like making women cry cry. I'm not joking, like really raunchy stuff, right? And then he did one bit about gun control, about his gun control bit about like, don't take my guns, you know, like that whole thing. And it went super viral, like launched him into the stratosphere.
I remember watching it in New York with like, again, you know, sort of progressive metropolitan cucks. And
okay, just keep going. Yeah.
and they loved it. I remember just these liberal Democrats who would probably vote Bernie Sanders, despite being just incomprehensibly wealthy, just loved it. They couldn't get enough of it. Rewatched it.
Yeah. So he did that bit. It was about a 5-minute bit about guns, and he just went insanely viral. His career changed, and ever since then, his tone has become much more political, PC. He saw where the money was, and he followed it. Fair enough. I'm just saying this hasn't worked out well for the likes of Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, anyone that used to be raunchy. They all see their day. And it's coming. I'm just sorry to say. But he did, to get back to my point, he did a really cool video. It was a nice, like, kind of one of those, like, Daily Show kind of journalism things where it's funny and, like, they do interviews. They went up to Canada, went up to Edmonton, north of Edmonton, so, like, you know, north, to some Inuit communities. Hey. And they spoke to some Inuit people. And they're just like, are you offended by this term? And they're just like, we don't care. And that was it. That was really the whole...
So there's many other issues. You know, let's get to the Edmonton Eskimos name after, you know, Trudeau's fixed our drinking water. It's like, can we direct our ire or social justice, you know, determination towards things that actually matter?
Yeah, the Inuits specifically have a lot of problem with drinking, you know, Northwest Territories, and the Inuit have problems with drinking problems. So like,
in some communities up there.
So that's more what maybe the focus should be on, not the Eskimos name. But so they've changed their name to the Edmonton Football Team, or because their logo is 2 E's, the EE Football Team.
Yeah. Does it not stand for anything now?
Doesn't mean anything now. It's like the Dolphin Noise Football Team is basically what it is. The football team is what they're called.
And what happened with the Redskins?
So that's what I was about to get to. Yeah. This whole thing is because Canadians have an inferiority complex where they want to join the fun, right? So if there's a racial movement going on in the U.S., which, there's problems in the U.S., then apparently anti-black racism really exists in Canada too, because of course it has to. Even though we have our own problems, I mean, I feel like Native communities are much more a victim here than the black community is, just going to be honest with you. But so we see the U.S. having fun, having riots, burning stuff down, going out protesting, and there's a pandemic going on, so it's the only way you can leave the house. And we eventually...
a bit of an action.
Yeah. So what happened is the Washington Football Team, as they're now called, formerly the Washington Redskins, got pushed by their sponsors, FedEx, Nike, or Nike, whatever you call it, took down all Washington Redskins apparel off their site, effectively putting a gun to their head. FedEx is the sponsor that owns the stadium name, saying they were going to back out. And again, we see poll after poll. There hasn't been too many of these, granted, but the last major one was, I think, 2009. So almost, over 10 years ago. Things have changed. But at the time, I think it was something like 90% of... 90% of Native Americans, American Native people, did not care.
Like, how significant can the swing be in 10 years?
And this is the thing. If I were, you want some representation. I get the Redskins name isn't particularly flattering.
Isn't it about the football, or is it actually about like?
No, I think it's just a term that used to be used. But now, look, there's one less native logo in the NFL's brand of logos. I don't know.
What about the Kansas City Chiefs?
So they don't have any imagery. They just use very specifically like the spear, the arrowhead.
Yeah.
And then they do that thing where they all the tomahawk chop. So we'll see where this goes. There's a lot of Native American football team names in sports. I mean, The Cleveland Indians must just be shaking in their boots right now. Totally, because they're next. The Cleveland Indians, come on. The Florida State Seminoles.
The Texas Rangers are is being considered racist.
Yeah, so they wanted to change the team name of the Texas Rangers next. Well, I don't know who wants this. It was trending on Twitter, which doesn't actually mean people want it.
A few social justice teenagers in the East Coast
because I guess
never watched a football game in their life.
Exactly. So because the Texas Rangers. The real Texas Rangers back in I don't know what the Rangers were in the 1890s or whatever, they were racist. I mean,
He wasn't.
I didn't even know that was a thing. I thought they were just called the Texas Rangers. I didn't know they're named after anything. So now everyone knows.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of Native American teams. The Braves, Atlanta Braves, get the Kansas City Chiefs, Florida State Seminoles. The reason the Blackhawks aren't as controversial is because there's a couple reasons I looked up, Wyke. Yeah. One, the imagery is actually very tasteful. He's not red. He's not like Chief Wahoo, smiling with a big grin on his face and a little feather coming out of his hat. It's actually just a profile of Chief Blackhawk, right?
Yeah.
The owner of the Blackhawks, the founder, the first owner, who gave the team the name, was a former World War II or World War I veteran. I can't remember exactly when, but he fought a war in a division named the Blackhawk Division, named after Chief Blackhawk.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of actual history this is a chief. We're named after a chief. It's not some caricature. It's not anything really that offensive. It's actually just what the guy looked like. So there's a lot of reasons why the Blackhawks are. It's actually probably the right way to do a Native American logo.
See,
to be honest,
I didn't know what to think about this. I didn't really watch North American sports.
Yeah,
but I look at the Kansas City Chiefs and their logo their old logo, and I think that's pretty obvious, the racism.
The Chiefs?
Like Chief Wahoo?
Oh, no, that's the Indians.
Oh.
The Cleveland Indians,
whatever. Yeah. And I think that should probably be unacceptable. I think the Redskins, just the name itself, probably goes a step too far. But again, I don't really know. I'm usually opposed to this sort of cancel culture stuff, but when you're making caricatures of other races, then perhaps you are crossing the line.
I don't see but this is the thing, do you see anyone getting mad about the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, where it's just a little Irish guy getting ready to fight, and he's drunk, and Irish people weren't exactly.
They weren't. Wasn't on the same level.
It wasn't the same level. Okay, fair enough. Okay, and so anyway, I don't know what's gonna happen with that. Hopefully, nothing. I hope this just goes away eventually. It's getting a little irritating, to be honest. I'm not racist, Black Lives Matter and all that, but come on, can we just watch some sports and get over it? And really quickly, we've done 20 minutes. Is that right? Yeah. Really quickly, I want to say, Nico always asks me how the Jays are doing. The Jays haven't played a single game in over a year or whatever. So I just want to say this. Toronto Blue Jays, today's opening day. I'm a big fan. Please do well. We got Vladdy Guerrero. We got Bo Bichette. We got Kevin Biggio. We got the good guy behind the plate. What's his name? The catcher, Jensen. I think this is our year.
How the hell does this turn into a sports podcast?
I just wanted to say that before we sign off. This has been a lot of sports talk. Anyway, thank you for joining Sports Talk in Canada with Nico Johnson and me, Roberto Wakerel Cruz. Thanks for tuning in. You want to say the other stuff?
Yeah, it's been a great pleasure. And do remember to like and subscribe and leave us a lovely comment. Again, it's really what gets me through the day. Really important to us. Help grow our channel. Thanks so much for continuing to watch us. I don't know why you do, but apparently there's some inherent value in this. So, give us a thumbs up and thanks so much for watching.
And hit the notification bell too. Thanks for watching.
Nice.